Conference. I would like to start by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, the Yagara and Turrbal peoples, pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and indeed acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands wherever you're joining us from today. I'd like to formally open the conference and hand over to the Principal Commissioner of the Queensland Family and Child Commission, Mr. Luke Twyford.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. It's really good to see so many people online for the second conference that Queensland has organised. I too will acknowledge that I'm joining you from the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people here in Meanjin, Brisbane, Australia. I also extend my acknowledgement to all the First Nations people present, as well as acknowledge that you are all joining us from the lands of our First Nations people, including, of course, our New Zealand colleagues who are joining us from across the waters. This is an incredibly important day where we can come together and focus in on the incredible work that you all do to understand the causes and drivers of child death, and to not just understand, but to teach and to amplify and to advocate for what we all need to do differently to ensure no children die, or indeed less children die. In my role as both the chair of the Queensland Child Death Review Board and the Principal Commissioner responsible for the Child Death Register, it's incredibly daunting for me to read the cases that come across my desk, and I cannot fully appreciate the impacts it must have on each of you. And that's why I'm really pleased to see the last session of today focusing in on vicarious trauma and the work that is occurring within your teams and across this country to understand what is best practice when it comes to looking after yourself and looking after those in your team. But that's at the end of the day. Throughout the course of the day, we've got some real impressive intellectuals giving us updates on significant projects they've led over the course of the last year and since our last conference. I'm hoping that you are able to each tune in and listen not only to the outcomes of their work, but the methodology by which they have done their work and made their learnings. And importantly, for roles such as mine, how those learnings have translated into changes in government policy programs and legislation, because ultimately that's why we're all here, to take the learnings from the lives of the children who are no longer with us and transform them into new policies, new procedures, new funding, and new ways to prevent the loss of child deaths. So a very warm welcome. I hope you enjoy today. As always, we will be interested in your feedback, but back to you, Chris, and to the team for what I truly think will be a very successful day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Luke. So I'm Christopher Smith. I'm an Executive Director here at the QFCC. Before we launch into today's proceedings, I'd like to start with a bit of housekeeping. As you may have noticed, today's sessions are being recorded, and the recordings will be distributed to registered participants and will be available on the QFCC webpage in the coming days. Unfortunately, the vicarious trauma session will not be recorded or available to view at a later stage. Today's sessions will allow for questions and answers. If you have a question you'd like to ask, then please pop it into the Q&A panel, which can be found on the bar at the top of your screens. Should we not have chance to answer your question during today's session, we'll endeavour to take it offline and provide a response